everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Football Talk, and of course, this is what was supposed to be on Blue Friday, but we got a rare Sunday edition of Hawk Talk, and lots to cover. Big game today, especially for Hawks fans, with the thought of postseason play still within the mix. Definitely something to take a look at. And of course, let's talk about our sponsor a little bit. Archer Duct Cleaning right here in the Seattle area. If you haven't had it done in the last year or so, probably a good idea to do it, especially with people coming in and out of your house all the time through the holidays. Those systems can get really dirty. Also, if you haven't had the dryer ducts cleaned in the last year, there are more than 15,000 dryer fires a year. Definitely something to get cleaned out. And, just something to think about. You can find them right on Facebook at Archer Ducts, and they'll be able to come out and clean your system. All right, let's check out one of the better Thursday night games in, probably this season. Let's be honest. Like, they have not been good. Last year wasn't great either, but this was one that was really fun to watch. Of course, I'm not talking about the one this week. I'm talking about the one with the Cowboys and the Hawks. Really entertaining game. The refs were a little bit too involved in that one. Obviously Pete alluded to that in one of his press conferences as well, and he was definitely not wrong. There was 19 penalties between the two teams for 257 yards. That's more yardage and penalties than a lot of quarterbacks have put up during the course of this season. So, and I'm not talking, teams that aren't playing good offense. I'm talking viable offenses are struggling to have some of those 257-yard days. So the refs were far too involved in this. Nonetheless, it ended up being a very entertaining game. It was close to the end. There were a couple of questionable decisions in that game that, ultimately became another loss for the Hawks. And one of them was obviously that last play. They let the end run free. Even if Gino would have completed that pass, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But it was a questionable call, to say the least. But we'll get to that. Gino had a great day otherwise. 3 for 334, 3 touchdowns. Did throw a pick. That's another scenario where the flags really came into play, because they got a takeaway from Dak that ultimately gets turned over. You get the Seahawks have to punch it in 3 times before the touchdown finally counted before half. They get down there. There's 7 seconds. They got to get a couple of yards, and it takes them 3 different tries. What was nice about it, though, is encouraging anyway, is they were able to punch it in all 3 times, right? So it didn't ultimately change the outcome of the game, but with a team that has struggled to get into the end zone, it was encouraging to see them be able to cap that drive off with a touchdown, despite the penalties that were really trying to hold them out. So not to say that they were trying to bet against the Seahawks. It was pretty even flag throwing between the two teams. Seattle had 10 penalties. The Cowboys had 9. Yardage wise, they were actually very close. So it definitely wasn't like the refs were picking on one team more than the other. Some of the timing and definitely some of the calls were questionable. But at the end of the day, you just don't want refs this involved in the game. There was a lot of offense in this game, but when you have penalties, over 250 yards, like there's entire games that don't have that many passing yards. So there's definitely some real questions as far as how tightly, especially against the Seahawks. They're the most penalized team in the league, and some of it, absolutely, right? Penalties happen. There's going to be holding calls. There's going to be pass interference. Those things happen. And the Seahawks have routinely hurt themselves with kind of unsmart play, we'll say, with guys like DK, continuing on after a play, stuff like that. So, not to say that they haven't earned a lot of these, but there's definitely some of these that they didn't earn or were very questionable, ticky-tack kind of things. And when you have the Zebras out there putting up this kind of, yardage totals on penalties, I mean, at some point you got to let these guys play the game. So that's just me. Again, I struggle with some of the ones that are getting called. So I don't love that. But one thing that was really nice, especially on the Seahawks side, because they've been so bad at this throughout the season, is they finally had a good day on third down. They were able to convert third downs. They went 9 of 14, which is especially, I mean, that's great in general. But for this particular team, I mean, they've been 30% or less on third down. So for them to be able to come out, be over 50%, man, that is a huge day on third down for them. They still struggled to get off the field on third down. So, I mean, there is still some of that issue for sure. But, it definitely, it's definitely part of it. So one thing that's really crazy about this team so they put up 35 yards. They didn't punt once. You hear that stat line, you should win that game. There's no question you should win that game. So there was definitely some letdowns on the defense, primarily just kind of poor tackling. There was some bad tackling. Obviously, some of those drives were extended because of penalties. In fact, all of Dallas's scoring drives were extended by penalties. So not to say that they wouldn't have necessarily scored anyway, but there were a couple of times that they probably could have got off the field on third down that just bad play on third down extends their drive. They ultimately go down and score. So there's definitely some of that. But, you have DK out there who had a huge day, gets 6 receptions, 134 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also puts up the fastest, touchdown run of the season at a little over 22 miles an hour. So, I mean, there was lots of good things from this game. Plus, it just happened to be a Thursday night game that was fun to watch. So, just some of those things were nice. Obviously, Myers does end up missing one of his kicks. It ultimately didn't matter, but he's in a little bit of a slump, but, don't hate on the guy too much. He is still getting the job done. So it's just kind of, sometimes kickers go through a little bit of a problem. And I wouldn't say that he's playing horribly. I mean, he's still making 3/4 of his kicks or more. So, I mean, it's not like he's been bad. He's just missed a couple in key spots. Some of them have been real long. So, I mean, those are harder to hit anyway. But so I wouldn't hate on him too much. And of course, we're still not getting our tight ends as involved as I'd like to see them. But, Fant did have a decent day. So, I mean, there were a lot of takeaways from this game that make you feel good about what they can do, just because, at the end of the day, the Cowboys are a playoff caliber team. They hung with them all night. A loss is still a loss, but there's elements from it that you can pull out that you're like, okay, these are things that they can build on. Those are encouraging elements. Unfortunately, we got a lot of injuries coming into this next week, so we'll kind of see how that goes. So let's get into some of these questions. We got a couple of them coming in live right now. All right, Seattle has to run the ball today. Is Locke playing? So both of those things are true. The running game is going to be a little bit tough, though. And why I say that is you have Kenneth Walker is still dealing with his oblique injury that's kept him sidelined for a couple of weeks. There's a really good chance that he's going to have very limited play today. The downside is Charbonnet hurt his knee last week, and so he's still dealing with that, which means you're going to see probably more of DJ Dallas, and you might see more of McIntosh getting involved. And, when you have your first 2 running backs go down, that doesn't exactly bode well for a huge running day. But we're going to need DK Dallas to really step up, because if Charbonnet is limited with the knee and Walker isn't ready to go, he's going to be that guy. And so hopefully he can come in and swing the way they need him to. But, that's going to be a little bit of tough sledding, I think. And as far as Locke going to play, Gino hurt his groin during practice, and I'm not sure exactly how he hurt it, especially since you're not allowed to hit quarterbacks during practice anyway, so I'm not sure exactly what he did. But there is some of that. He may start. I know that they activated Sean Mannion from the practice squad, from the practice squad. He was released from Minnesota's practice squad like 2 weeks ago. So he is on the active roster. So they're going to be going into today's game with 3 quarterbacks, which makes you think that Geno is really that game time decision. And, who knows if he's going to be ready to go. But if not, I know Drew Lock did get some first team reps. So we'll see how that pans out. All of these things are making it harder to go against a team that has really been in the height of its stride after coming off just beating up on the Eagles and, of course, beating up on the Hawks the week before. So there's definitely some there's a lot of questions. And there's a reason that most of the media has really picked against the Seahawks here. Not only are the Niners really clicking on all cylinders, but the Seahawks are coming in a little bit depleted into a team that, appears to be a bit of a juggernaut. They do need to be aggressive on defense. There's some injuries to the D that we're going to go over in a little bit that, are going to make that a little bit harder to do. Pass rush could definitely be an issue going into this. But let's get into some more of these questions before we start breaking down the Niners game. This one I got a lot Friday afternoon. What happened to the show Friday morning? I ended up with a cabling issue and I couldn't get my camera to link. So it would have just been a radio version of the show. The mic was kind of cutting in and out and it ended up just being a fitting. But I'm going to make sure that never happens again. So I ordered a couple of them. So if one ever dies, I can swap it out. It was a piece that I would have never thought would have failed. There's so many other elements that were much higher likely failures that I had extras of. And this one just ended up being a fitting with no moving parts. And for some reason, it's the piece that died minutes before the show. So unfortunately, I didn't have time to swap anything out. And that's why I missed it on Friday, which is why you have this rare edition of a Sunday morning show. All right, let's see. We got, is Lucas going to play? So he is listed as unspecified. So I don't know exactly what that means. He actually doesn't even have any practice designations throughout the week. He has one for Monday where it says limited practice. And then each day after that, it's just blank on the injury report. And it just says unspecified. So your guess is as good as mine. They need him, but with a knee injury, if he's not going to be effective, he's not going to be, it wouldn't be helpful anyway. But, again, at the end of the day, your guess is as good as mine. Their injury report actually doesn't tell you. And that's on the Seahawks site and with the NFL. So I'm not sure what that means. It's very weird to see a guy that just says unspecified with no information about that week of practice. So does he play this week? I don't know. Does he play moving forward is the real question. I mean, if he misses this week to get right, that is what it is. But if it's just that going forward, that could hurt this team a lot because they've been struggling up front anyway. They finally got him back, and that knee is still an issue that he hurt earlier in the year. So hopefully he can play. Hopefully he can be effective. But as far as the injury report, there's really no information. Let's see. Can they still get in the playoffs? So they can. They still control their own destiny. Obviously, with the Rams beating them twice, that becomes a little bit of an issue. The Rams meet up with Baltimore today, though. So that's going to be probably an L for this Rams team. So like I've said all season, I think the Hawks can still be a 10-7 team, and they're going to need to be to really get in. Because they don't necessarily have the tiebreakers with some of the other teams. And the ones they do have a tiebreaker with are going to win their division. So it's not going to matter. So this is one where they need either the game today or the one against Philly, and then they have to win the last 3. They can do it. Now, they're winning this week. I don't have them winning this week, but they just matchup wise, they don't match up great against the 49ers. Plus, with the injuries, like it's not amazing. Now, when you look at how they match up against Philly, they can beat Philly. And then the last 3 are very winnable games. So they still have, excuse me, they still have a path to 10-7. If they get to 10-7, there's a really good shot that they'll, at a minimum, get the final seed, right? The only downside to that is there's a real potential if they get the final seed that they're going to either face the Eagles or the Niners. I mean, if they face the Eagles again, that could be okay. The Niners, man, they just schematically they don't match up really well against the Seahawks. Well, I guess from the Niners standpoint, they match up amazing with the Seahawks, but that Seahawk defense doesn't match up well with what the Niners do well. So again, we'll get further into that as we go. Let's see. Does DK's big day change your thinking about trading him? So not really. He had an amazing day for sure. He played mistake-free football. He was able to catch just about everything. Obviously, he had that one big play down the field. I mean, he showed you everything that he is as an athlete in that game. Plus, Geno had enough time to actually get him the ball. So kudos to the guys up front, getting Geno a little bit more time to throw the ball around outside of that last play. But, you know, it's one thing with DK is if you have enough time to get him the ball, he can absolutely make plays. So it's not that he's a bad player. I think it's just one of those where he gets underutilized a lot of times, and he has a tendency to drop some of the easy passes and, you know, get some penalties. And no one good game is really going to make me feel different about that. But, you know, if he played more like he did against Dallas all the time, then no, you absolutely keep him, of course. It's just all the other elements that come and go throughout the season that make it hard. All right. Should the Hawks use DK more like Debo? So I actually like this question, and yes, I would love to see that, because if you could get him moving around a little bit in the backfield, you know, get some of those kind of out swinging routes, you know, stuff like that. It would drag some of the linebackers away, right? Because they have to account for what this route can mean. And that can, you know, help with some of that pass rush. So would he be good in that kind of scheme? Absolutely. You know, as long as he can catch those balls, which there's no reason to think that he can't. So this is one where I would love to see them utilize him more like that, especially as a big bodied guy. He can beat out some of those contested balls that are close. So yeah, that would be great to see that. Let's see. Bobby Wagner nominated Walter Payton Man of the Year. I mean, such a good guy, right? And whether he was, you know, through his career here in Seattle, he goes down to LA, comes back. I mean, he's been that dude the whole time. So this is a great nomination. And yeah, I mean, I hope he wins it. I hope he wins it, because he definitely deserves that. And he's been just a class act since he got into the league until today. I mean, he's that guy. So again, hope he wins it. Couldn't be a more deserving guy. Let's see. Do I agree with Cowherd that they need to draft a QB and stop pretending Geno is the answer? I mean, so on its face, sure. The thing is I don't think anybody ever thought that Geno was the answer, right? He had a great first year, but they gave him a contract that is laid out in a way that they didn't trust it either. There's an out after each season. It's not a super high contract. They have the ability to move on anytime. And this is such a deep draft that even if they make it into the playoffs and say they're drafting, in the low to mid 20s, which is really possible if you're a first round, if you just make it in the first round or, just miss whatever, you'll kind of be right around in there. With as many quarterbacks that are in this draft, you could absolutely draft a guy and he doesn't have to play right away. Because again, Geno isn't super expensive. Drew Lock is on a 1-year deal, so he may be moving on anyway. So if you're looking at it that way, yeah, you draft a guy, you let him sit behind Geno for a year. Geno gets him up to speed as far as the NFL and how all of that works. They don't have to come in and swing immediately. I would love to see them draft a guy, especially since, at this point, Geno is not the long-term answer anyway. Even if he stays for all 3 years, then he's going to be close to 35 or 34, 35, something like that. Could be wrong, but I think right in there. Excuse me. So I mean, of course you draft a guy. I mean, with as deep as it is, you have the draft capital. Even if you wanted to kind of go after a guy outside of, maybe Caleb or something is going to go number one. But if you were going to go after a Bo Nix or, a Penix or maybe a Daniels, if you wanted to go after one of those guys and you had to move up to 15 or something like that, I mean, you could. But again, as deep as it is, you could stay right where you are and still get a guy. Honestly, you could probably get a guy in the first part of the second round and still be fine. So I think, yeah, I mean, I would agree with Cowherd. I didn't see that clip, so I don't know the tone behind it. But yeah, I mean, on its face, sure, I agree with Cowherd that Geno isn't the long-term answer and you should get your next guy in the building. Of course. Does Drew Lock start today? So, like we said a little bit ago, Geno did end up with a groin injury during practice. I believe it was on the Thursday practice. And he is questionable for today. Sean Mannion was activated. So from the practice squad, anytime you're bringing 3 QBs into the game, it means they don't have a lot of faith in your starter making it through the game or even potentially getting the start. So we'll see. We'll see how he does. But if Lucas is out and Geno has a groin injury, he's going to have a hard time moving around. That doesn't make you feel really good with a guy like, Bosa coming across the line trying to light him up. So tough to say if Drew gets the start, but based on them activating a third string guy, I'd say there's a pretty good shot that even if he doesn't get the start, he probably gets some playing time today. What's wrong with our tackling? Man, there's a lot wrong with our tackling. So the biggest part of it is they're not wrapping anybody up. There has been a lot of throw a shoulder and hope you knock them down. And the athletes are just too big and strong to consistently get them on the ground with just a shoulder smash. So, yeah, I'm not really sure why the tackling has suffered so much, especially since during the Legion of Boom, they actually released a how-to tackling video. So it seems like if nothing else, they should be able to have their own video in their rooms to be like, hey, remember, this is how you tackle. Get the head across, out of the way, lead with the shoulder, wrap up. Like this isn't rocket science. This has been a thing for a long time at all levels of football. So the fact that it's been suffering a lot of just kind of arm tackles or shoulder throws, it doesn't make you feel good watching it, because whether you used to play or a current player, or if you're just a fan of the sport, when you watch that, you're just like, that's not how you're supposed to do it, right? I mean, you don't have to be an expert in the sport to realize that tackling is bad. That would be like, if you see a helicopter in a tree, you don't have to have known how to fly a helicopter to realize that helicopter is not supposed to be in a tree, right? So kind of similar in that way. So yeah, hopefully they can get the tackling worked out. They're going to really need it against this team today. Why is Frank Clark out? This is a weird designation. It just says personal reasons. There's nothing else. There's nothing else listed. So why he's out for the game today, I have no idea. Hopefully it's not something that lasts multiple weeks, but not having Frank Clark out there is going to be felt a little bit. So it's unfortunate, but just as personal reasons. So whatever that means. But the only thing we do know is he will not be there today. Is this Pete's last year? No. I mean, he only has 2 years left on the contract anyway, right? He has this year and next year. So I really doubt that they're going to terminate him early. I don't know why they would. It seems like they would just go ahead and let him play it out. Plus, John Schneider, his contract ends at the same time. So if you were ever going to do any of that, that would be the time to do it. That way you get your new coach, your new GM, all of that, all at the same time. Potentially if you brought in a quarterback, through the draft, that next ownership group gets to take on that rookie, so they don't have a huge quarterback contract they got to deal with. So that's kind of how I see that going down. But no, this isn't Pete's last year. He's at least going to finish his contract out. So let's see. Who buys the Seahawks? So this is interesting because they're not even officially up for sale yet. But it's coming. And some of that is, I think, that it ends up going for sale probably right around the same time that Pete and John, their contracts come up, because then your new ownership group can bring in the guys that they want. I can kind of see that being the way it goes down, especially after watching what happened in Denver and what happened with Washington. They, the ownership comes in and they ultimately are going to clean house anyway, right? So if you're going to clean house anyway, you might as well do it at the same time that your contracts are coming up. So you get to bring in your guys. That would be the way I would do it. So I'm curious to see if they really start getting some traction on potential selling talks after this season. You wouldn't do it during the season. It becomes a distraction. But I could see it kind of as the end of the season nears, you could probably hear some of those talks increasing. And some of the rumors that I've heard, obviously, there's nothing official here, so this is purely speculation. But some of them that I've heard are that the Hansen Group, who was trying to bring hockey here, that was really just kind of sidelined by Seattle City Council. But it sounded like they may throw their hat in the ring. I don't know if they're really going to be able to, but that's some of the rumors that are going on. So we'll see. Hopefully we start getting a clear image of what that might look like realistically this offseason. Because even if they don't sell it next year, these are the conversations that have to start happening, because you already know that Jody Allen and that leadership group doesn't want to be involved in sports anymore. That was Paul Allen's thing. And so they do want to move on from that. That's been true from the start. So it's not like they were hiding that fact. Soon as Paul Allen passed away, they were very upfront with, hey, we're going to get out of these types of things. It's just not what they're into, which is fine. As long as they have an owner that comes in that is going to leave our teams in Seattle. That is the biggest thing. We don't want it to be a Sonic situation where they get moved, or wherein Ken Behring tried to buy the Seahawks and was trying to take them down to LA. We don't need any of those distractions. So if we can get an ownership group that wants to leave them in Seattle, kind of has a transparent, plan, so that, your Seattle fans feel good about the situation, that would be ideal. But as it sits right now, it's all just speculation because they're not officially up for sale yet. But it's definitely coming. It's definitely coming. All right, so let's break down this game a little bit that we have later today. So the Hawks are going down to battle San Fran for the second time in 3 weeks, and the Niners came off beating up the Hawks pretty good, and then going to Philly and doing work up there. So they are really clicking on all cylinders. They are also a very healthy team, and they've shown that when they're healthy, they can pretty much beat up anybody. So this is going to be a tall task for Seattle to take on today anyway. But the Hawks, they look to get right. They dropped the last 3 in a row, but they had a good showing against the Cowboys. Cowboys are a good team. And, is it still an L? Of course. But there were so many things that were good about that game that you have to feel like they can be in this game. So the other thing that kind of helps Seattle, for whatever reason, they play so much better when they're the underdog. And if you watch any of the standard sports media, no one has taken Seattle in this game. Now, some of that is because of injuries and question marks around, guys that are even going to be in, and how well the Niners have been playing with everybody healthy. But for whatever reason, when everyone picks against the Hawks, they show up and show out. So I can't rule them out. Now, admittedly, in my pick'em and my spread, all of that, I did take the Niners just because from the analyst end of it, it's the smart play. They just absolutely hammered the number 1 team in the league. So you have to think that they can do that again here. Now, as a fan, I hope I'm wrong. I absolutely hope that I am 100% wrong on this, and the Hawks come out and do work, and that also puts them well on their way to be that 10-7 team that they need to be. So it's the downside to having a favorite team is, from the analyst side, I have to be unbiased and smart and look at what's in front of me. And then the fan end of me, I'm like, but they could do it. And, any given Sunday, they definitely can. But, man, they're sure walking into a buzzsaw today. If there is an area that the Hawks can really attack this Niners team, is the secondary. So as long as Geno or Locke or whoever ends up getting the start, as long as the offensive line can protect him, then it allows you to really attack some of that secondary. And there's been weakness there. So not to say that they're a bad unit, because I'm not saying that at all. But if you were going to attack a unit of this Niners team, the secondary is the one you can. And when you look at the stable of receivers that the Seahawks have, with DK and Lockett and JSN and Bobo, like, they have guys that can expose elite corners. So if they can get Geno or Locke time and allow those guys to get into their full routes, then this is definitely a Seahawk team that can hang with them. But that's just that's just part of it. Hold on just a sec. Got something happening here. It's freezing up. Okay, there we go. Lost signal there for a second. Sorry, guys. Totally forgot where I was now. The secondary. All right. So again, sorry about that. Live podcasting is fun. It sometimes you end up with some weird scenarios. So in any event, the secondary is really a spot where this receiving core can attack this Niners team, but it'll all come down to that offensive line. As long as you don't have to have a lot of off-script play, I think that the Hawks will be able to hang in this. But if the offensive line isn't getting it done, this could be a long day for the Seahawks. Let's see. We got, of course, we already talked about Geno and his groin injury, so that's a real question going in. We're not actually going to hear one way or the other until game time, so that's going to be a question mark until then. And of course, it's really going to fall down on the arm talent of whoever is under center, because again, Walker, Charbonnet both have injuries. Both listed as questionable, which means your number one back could be DJ Dallas. And as much as DJ Dallas is an awesome part of this team, he's not a Walker or a Charbonnet, right? So we'll see what we get out of Dallas and potentially McIntosh. So, but that's kind of where we are there. You pair that with Reed and Brooks injuries. There's going to be a lot of next man up opportunity on this defense, which that's asking a lot for your second string guys to come in and play this Niners team as hot as they've been playing for the last few weeks. So there's going to be, you're going to need almost perfect play on the defense from a lot of guys that may not have a ton of starts in this league. So we'll have to kind of see how that works out. But again, the game against the Cowboys was encouraging. There was a little bit better tackling. Guys were flying around, guys were making plays. They still gave up a lot of yards. So, it's not like it was perfect, but it was definitely encouraging, especially because they were capping drives off in the end zone, which is something they've struggled to do throughout the season. And, so that was good to see. And of course, like we said at the beginning of the show, penalties still reign supreme for this Seahawks team. That is going to be one of the biggest things they're going to have to do better about throughout this game. Is they really need to keep it to 5 or less penalties to be able to stay in this thing. And they can't be bad penalties. If they're going to be anything, they have to be the 5-yard variety that aren't just absolute drive killers, or on the other end, giving away points by having a deep downfield PI or anything like that. Like they're going to have to play incredibly smart football to be able to stay in this game, especially with the injuries that they have. As a Hawks fan, I'm a little bit worried going into this one just because the Niners come in really healthy and are playing out of their minds. And, we're not even entirely sure who we have at quarterback when the game kicks off this afternoon. So, but we'll see. And of course, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. And other than that, enjoy the game. And you got kickoff coming here in about 20 minutes for your early games. So other than that, take it easy, guys.